if you know the Earth's electric circuit, there's an inbound and an outbound. So the charge comes in and then the charge goes out. It could be, let's just to call it electricity to make it easy. Like in your wall socket, you flip the light, something's coming in. And if you want to have it go to another light socket, it's going to go somewhere and it could come out. So anyway, electricity pretty much stabilizes itself, electromagnetic charges. So the sun's been very active for the last 400 years. And now we sit in a time in an era where the crust is really overcharged with electricity, like a giant solar capacitor, a planetary capacitor. You think a little tiny capacitor, and they can't get these chips because they can't, that little tiny chip is enough to run a supercomputer in your car. And it's this little tiny thing, and capacitor is what they do today in the modern electronics, like, oh my. And it's like a little tiny thing that can control and contain so much power. I mean, unbelievable. It's scientific beyond going to the moon kind of thinking back in the 1920s. In today, if you really rationalize how powerful, now take it up to a planetary size. Now that electricity needs to go somewhere and discharge out. So when it's coming out of the crust, it's outbound. And see, okay, there is a lot of solar flares and, you know, CMEs and plasma coming from the sun onto the Earth. And it's wrapping around the electromagnetic field lines, and you're seeing it as those double twisted field line currents, pigtails, if you will, and the huge auroras and everything. That's the inbound. That's plasma. That's like density particles itself. But that flows into the Earth, and there's something else going out, which is of a different substance. Okay, plasma is coming in. It's like this fourth state of matter things, if you will. It doesn't really burn. It's hot. You have to take a look at it to try to even understand what it is. And it vibrates at a different frequency, and that's how it's able to hold its state beyond what we understand as fire or bolts of electricity, something like this. It's in its different realm, fourth state of matter. Okay, that's on the inbound current coming in. That's why you see all those pretty auroras on the top and the bottom of the planet. That's charging in, but then somewhere else, there's another matching outbound current. Now, the outbound current coming out is getting stronger, sometimes incredibly strong faster, but just generally you're just almost turning up the light bulb like you do in a coffee shop, and it's just glowing ever so slightly brighter every day, every week. It's getting a little brighter. So brighter means faster vibrational, faster electricity, higher charge. So think about that. If there's an area on the planet where there's an electric current coming off the crust out back to the sun, and it's been stable for hundreds of years, and then it starts to move faster, the air currents around that would move too, and they would bend, and there would be strange weather patterns. So if you can map out where the instances of elves are now, those are dictating where the electromagnetic field lines are coming out above the ionosphere. So I've been looking at an enormous amount of pictures and just looking at our planet in a different way. I'm not really looking at it as oceans and everything. It's more of a spherical magnet, and where are those field lines coming in and out of this ball that affect the atmosphere or local weather around. I'm taking it's completely a different way to look at the Earth in your mind as well. It's just the electromagnetic frequency versus a round spinning wet ball, you know. So anyway, that's kind of what I've been doing this week, Ransom, and I'm glad we're here. I'm glad we're alive. I'm glad we take another breath, and we're going to have food this Thanksgiving.
Well, it'll just cost, like 20% more than usual. But yeah, I went looking for turkeys today. There was some out there, but the groceries just didn't look like, my memories of Thanksgiving growing up, when there actually was an abundance, and even in poor times that I remember, like in times in the 80s and 90s, when there wasn't much money going around, the people around me, we had plenty as far as Thanksgiving food and all that stuff. It's given me a new appreciation on what people thought were poverty before were versus now, because I make this analogy a lot, but there's not much difference between our society and the society that's living in the Stone Age, still in mud huts and, different stuff. The only difference is we have 4 or 5 plasma TVs and internet connection in ours. So we have Big Brother, and what we think is really advancement is really like an invisible cage here. I've been trying to get to where we can spend way more time outside and less time paying attention to the system. because it's closing in its walls. So soon you'll have to deal with it anyway. So I figured that there might be a little window here to accumulate some wealth in this new system, and you can see that it's rolling on out. We've been talking about probably since the middle of last year how they would give a little freedom, and I think that that's kind of up this summer. They did that, and you can see
Finished.
all the countries are going to try to go back to the lockdowns and the micromanaging of every little movement you make, and that's really all that's going on. And how do you feel about the FOIA request? They said they'd go ahead and let everybody know, the internal stuff from Pfizer. We just have to wait till like 2076 or something like that. So, if you're wondering about any information that you could read about the products and the business practices of certain companies, you can just not know about it. We'll just protect them all the way. So you could really tell who's running things right now. The WHO and the the UN and all of their medical tyranny is what I'm going to call it. It's going down everywhere, and people think that we backed off of it a little bit here because of some Supreme Court ruling, or excuse me, a lower court ruling. But you can see the administration just ignoring that. Still, they're still trying to bully companies into complying. And like I was talking about the last couple times we talked, half of our military is about to not be our military. So I would suggest to you guys that the half that's leaving would be the half that was more loyal to its countrymen and maybe our way of life here, versus the people that are conformists that are going to go ahead and take the mandate, even though it's against their own interest. And I've been seeing across the board, some of these bigger companies like Amazon, Walmart, et cetera, they're turning to a robot workforce, from everything from building things to packaging it to delivering it in drones. You might have saw in the headlines, Walmart is now going to start trying to deliver their goods by drone and shift more to the pick it up and order it online. And if you've ever used that service, you'll know that you don't really get what you order. You just get something close to it, or they made it enough and filled out part of your order. So we're going into an interesting time right now, with everything from gasoline to food just skyrocketing in price. It's kind of hard to see where people are going to not notice that the little bit of I'm going to go ahead and say universal basic income that the government is trying to make people happy with, it isn't really a solution to the long-term problem that we're about to face, which is shortages. But I think it's in the psyche of the people. You got one spectrum, kind of like us, that maybe feel a little energized from times changing, and the fact that we did have a little bit of heads up, whether it's psychic or just because we were researching and reading everything. But there's a lot of people for some reason that just are not capable, I guess, of converting to the new system, or the stresses of the world are too much of them for them. So like suicide is skyrocketing in the US, and with all of the weird propaganda on television and mind control predictive programming, and how they're trying to tweak and adjust every single facet of our culture and society, it's really no surprise that some people are not going to be able to just mentally handle what's coming. And it's going to get a lot more confusing, convoluted about what's okay to do and what's not okay, because they're introducing lots of laws. They're not following the ones we have already. So it's a confusing time, but that's pretty fascinating, that whole idea of what you were talking about the energy inflow and outflow of our planet. And you'd be kind of naive to think that human beings aren't on a similar cycle, considering that we're as we've said before, we're electric beings here. And I've been checking out some of these fictional stories that my son likes, and I keep finding this common occurrence of the four elements there, fire, water, earth, and air. And, it makes me further realize that there's so much of a regression in our society. At one time, they understood the basic concept of matter. I mean, to the point where they kind of
Ransom just dropped off the call. Don't know if he lost his microphone there. But I'll go back into the changes, because the electromagnetic field around you as a human being interacting with the other electromagnetic fields around other human beings, that distance is about 6 feet. And I encourage you to take a look at different research that would say the same. So I find it highly unusual that, during these times of change, when our innate abilities to manifest and, see through different layers that were invisible before, or maybe they become visible in a different frequency, that you're starting to see and understand and perceive. If you're connected to all those people like we were back in 2017 or the year 2000, everybody was super excited about the change of the millennia, all those electromagnetic fields would kind of sink into one. And then suddenly we're at this great reset and everybody's divided. So they're doing it on purpose to keep the society so this planet's not uplifted. It's as if they're holding the ability for humans to create their own literal space on the planet is being hijacked. And these electromagnetic frequencies are going to cause more earthquakes too, and you'll see an uptick in volcanoes, a little more volcanic ash, a few things. But Ransom was painting kind of a dire picture. You back, Ransom? You're just kind of building it up for me there.
Yeah, sorry about that. I unplugged my headphones on accident there, and I was just talking to myself, I guess. Anyway, no, I was.
Yeah, you were building
I
it up
was
for me,
just,
man. Like the world's over. Come on, man, keep going.
no, I actually went kind of in a different direction. I was kind of talking about how you put it with the electricity coming in and going out, and I think I was pointing out that we used to view the world in a different way, and people, a lot of these esoteric writings would talk about the four element states, fire, water, earth, and air. And it made me realize that they were actually talking about complex science and the four actual states of matter, which are solid, liquid, gas, and plasma.
Yep, the
And it made me
gas.
realize that, yeah, so maybe at the time, I think the reason that we find all of these super quartz rich rocks at all of the ancient sites is because they were just coming out of a time where they could actually literally use some of these energies instead of more of a conceptual idea. It was a literal idea. And I think they had some kind of piezoelectric technology that allowed them to move stones and do all kinds of stuff. And we're going into that age, and it seems like just knowledge all around is completely suppressed. But at the same time, when people are getting negative, I'm kind of excited because, I was always the outman reading weird stuff and noticing things that don't pay attention. And it kind of brings me back to this FOIA request for the
Oh, wait,
pharmaceutical
before you get into
companies
that,
here.
can I drop a thought on the elements?
Yeah, go for it.
So we're going to talk about the four elements. The gas is the key, and then what do we got? Liquids or water, and then solids, and then plasma. So if you can transmute elements starting with gas, you can turn it into a liquid, which would also entail a solid, by using plasma. Depending on the current flow into it, it can be transmuted. And I will come back to Prometheus Fuels that we spoke about just for a fraction of a second on that last program. What they're doing is they call it Electrofuels, where they're taking regular gases and then using electrical charges, Tesla device with an anode, cathode, higher charge, lower charge, pulse charge, whatever it is, to make these elements come back together. They're gases originally, but they turn into liquid fuels. That is the craziest thing. Like, we haven't been doing this. We know about electricity for 120 years. So when you're looking at the ancient, like you're saying, the esoteric knowledge, if you would have known plasma and just that one other ingredient, the fastness, which makes sense why you would incorporate astrology inside, astronomy, because the faster vibration through space would allow you or a greater understanding of what plasma would do with a higher charge. What if you could harness that electricity from somewhere? It could be like you were talking about paleo or piezoelectric, or what if you could get some current out of the earth? You know, you stick an antenna in the earth and you're going to get some charge out of it. Damn, you can run something with a lemon. Do you think that hasn't been thought of? Even if you're using lemon power, let's say you have 50,000 lemons and you plug them all in a wall, you get enough current to increase plasma's glow state by just using lemons. If you had enough, like 50,000 lemons, make a wall of them. So taking that one substance to turn it into other substances, that all the substances transmute every other one all the way down to where it gets to, how does it loop back to plasma? Because if it starts with plasma at the top, you can use any of those other three in conjunction to create the others. Because a solid isn't really a solid. A solid appears to be solid, but it's still just energy molecules, atoms put together. And if they can be deconstructed back to their base atoms or sets of molecules that could be built upon, that solid could also be transmuted back into a gas. And then it can start the process over. It goes from a gas, you put several molecules together that turn to a liquid. You turn those liquids and get a heavy sludge like bitumen in a bottle of a barrel, and you add another couple molecules and you got tar, asphalt. Then you're back to a solid again, but then you can break that, transmute it apart, all using a frequency, all of it. So again, you know, the frequency going into plasma to change it. It would affect weather currents. It would affect a lot of regional weather around different areas where they grow crops. Now, faster charge means bigger storms, more cyclonic storms, faster moving cavitations in the atmosphere, for a better term. But I really think we have been led down this road of subservience and central bank enslavement for purchasing this. Fuels. Because if these guys are going to use electricity to create liquid fuels from the air by reconstituting molecules and atoms to create a different electrofuel, we never have had to have anything at all. We never would have built the copper lines. We wouldn't have needed to have all these, delivery devices of pipelines, and this stuff could have been manufactured every single town and city because they all have electricity. So they'll all be manufacturing their own electrofuels in this thing. I know economy of scale at some point, but think about the world, how different it would be if there was no charge for you to run your cars, run your businesses, manufacture anything, air motor fuels, all of it, like maybe just like even a tenth of a cent or a half a cent compared to the $3, $6 you're paying now. Imagine if there was no motor fuels and there was no charge for electricity, all that was free, all energy resources to run the economy were free. Like how much more time would we have? And I look at these very things, understanding that code, that is a hidden code. You might call them the globalists, the elitists, the Illuminati, the secret societies, whatever their label is. They all got that knowledge about those elements being used together. And they seem to cycle them through the same way they're cycling through these control systems from the top down for the Earth inhabitants. At this time, we're going through different parts of the solar system mapped out by the astronomy, so they know they'll know the vibration. So if they know the vibration, they'll know what kind of control method, which means maybe these beings that are here are living lifetimes of 25 to 50,000 or 100,000 years at a time, because they would have gone through the full procession at least once and known every single constellation, how it would vibrate, and the energy, the stimulus on the human population on the planet, and then how that would need to be controlled through the golden ages, the fast vibrations, all the way to the iron ages like we just came out of. But you need to understand the plasma again. So I think we come full circle, and it's the same, these. If you understand that one element, you get the rest of it. Large or small?
Yeah, they definitely want to control all of these new techs. I've been reading that all of these supposed billionaires that are going into space, they're crying because the government wants to tax them some more, so they're complaining it'll cost them too much to go to space. But you notice that they're not really going to space, and you kind of pointed out something. There may be a reason why there's been a giant chip shortage right now. It may be because they know what the sun cycle is right now, And it's their way to kind of retain resources at the same time as blame it on a different contributing factor like the supposed shipping problems from the pandemic. But think about what would have happened just the other day when we had that solar storm, had it been a little worse, and all of these brand new cars were out there, these cars with AI, which if you've been paying attention, all of the auto manufacturers, including some of the newer models like Apple and stuff like that, want to have the entire roadway full of auto driving cars. And I mean auto completely, like where you're cut out of the decision making and you're just a passenger. It may be because they were either waiting to have a more AI type chips in the work that they have, and they may be, in my opinion, I think that they're using this as an excuse to completely redesign the back doors and chips that'll be coming out here in the next couple of years, where all of them will be AI connected ready. So you just imagine your new truck or whatever, you're driving down the road, and say your social credit score decided that you're no longer, being banked, or you've been debanked or something to that effect. And you can just imagine your new vehicles just turning off, and not just your vehicles, but all of the other AI products that they're offering now. And that goes all the way to big farms that are using robots, and it circles around to what I was talking about. All of these companies are straight up eliminating the human need. And I kind of harped on that for the past couple of years on my channels about the robots. But now that they're getting people used to staying home for a universal basic income there's more room for robots, and people have shown that they're unwilling to work for the money if they could just sit home and get a little bit of the money. So it puts the opportunity for everyone else out there. It kind of circles back to last week when we were talking about right now is the best time for people that have trades, because they can make a killing in the so-called black market, but really it's the free market where you go and you make a deal with another person that has a skill, and you make a deal with them, whether it's food for labor or whatever it is. And this also gets around all the municipalities that want you to permit everything. It has to be done a certain way by a certain tradesman, whether it's electrical or gas or whatever it is. If people are just doing it and it's just fixed, it completely takes them out of the loop. And that's what they're afraid of, all the way back to those fuels you were talking about, is that eliminates the need for these people that suck off of society that we call government, that have red tape and bureaucratic jobs that don't really produce anything. And for the past 10 years, slowly we've been hiring more and more government. And now that the workforce is laid off, and over half of the workforce is going to be eliminated out of their job description because they don't want to take a new mandate from their company, you could see that we're going into a real situation where companies are going to double down on the electronics and AI robotic workforce, and they don't need you anymore. They just need you to keep buying products from them. And when you know that the end result is a lower population, you'll know that these products aren't necessarily good for you. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, and those mandates aren't legal either. There's no legal binding behind them. So all the people jumped in front of the line to make sure they were good corporate citizens too. It's way beyond even being a good government citizen. Now it's like, I'm a good corporate citizen too. I did everything the corporation said. Didn't take the government. It's because I care. The company said it. You're taking it a whole level down in the whole control thing. People, I can't. How many? I just shake my head and be like, yes, people, yes, people. Yeah, like how many yes people are out there? Holy smokes! And you know what? That thing about the self-driving car and the AI scares me a little bit too, because like you said, okay, that car can be turned off remotely, which means, hey, you couldn't even, okay, the car stops, you lost your social credit score. I got to walk home now. Or what if the car locked the trunk and said you even lose the access to your emergency water in your car? And then take it a step further. What if the AI decided to, you've been banned on social credit and you were sentenced for some kind of whatever through an AI judge, and then suddenly that car locks, or you can't even get out of it, or it self-drives you to a police station or suffocates you or takes you somewhere else because of your thought, as they're going to read the thoughts. Well, what if they incorrectly read a thought like they did in Minority Report? Those cars could be used to lock people in, lock goods, lock service, anything you had. in addition to not just the simplest of not being able to allow you to drive. Or is that too deep, man?
No, that's not too deep. Actually, it's very likely because different companies are working on ways to find out who's sick and who's not sick also. So it may be just your car decides that you're infectious and locks you in there, and maybe takes you to one of the local COVID places, which is pretty weird. I don't know if you saw that thing in Texas. Say you were playing, and I want to make this point up because we're talking about kind of the I don't want to call them bootlickers, but that's kind of the way it is. The compliers anyway. What have they actually gotten for complying over the last year? They told them, if you just give us a little bit of your freedoms, you'll be out there doing your thing, and not too long. It's just going to be a couple months. How about you take this, take a little more, and then you can be free? Well, it hasn't worked out that way for none of the countries that have done it. Actually, supposedly more people are getting sick for whatever reason. I know we're not going to get into that, but more people are getting sick in the places where they've complied. So they did their masks, they did their medication, and still they're going to lock them down this Christmas, and still they're telling them that they don't want them to move around. So if you just keep thinking about what do the people that comply get, they don't really get anything. They promise them, if you behave and you do what we want, you'll get this and that. And I think the same thing's going to happen with these credit score style things. They will tell you if you behave a certain way, you'll get the first dibs on tickets or all kinds of silly, useless things that people think are important, discounts on things. But if there's no real food to go around and there's no products to go around, you're really just first in line for nothing. And they never these kind of arrangements never turn out the way that they always advertise them, so you lose in the end. And I saw this thing going on in Texas, so evidently they've scared everyone into compliance, so people comply. They feel like they're sick and they go down and they want to get a treatment, come to find out that they might be the wrong race, wrong color, wrong age group. Even if they did want to go and participate in the system and do what they said and take their treatments, they're making like this idea, kind of like they have before, when you tell certain people that they can't get it, that more of them will fight to get it instead of realize that it was a bad idea in the first place, and they did, they may not have needed it. But if you start telling people they can't have things, they'll demand it. And it seems like right now in the US, from the Rittenhouse case, where I watched that. I don't know if you watched any of that, but it didn't really seem like a trial um, to convict someone of murder. What it really seemed like was it's a trial against a certain firearm, a trial against a certain type of ammunition, and it was a trial for the simple fact that can you defend yourself against the mob? Because according to the DA in that case, you should just take a beating, and you should be fine. Even though we've seen people beat to death for trying to protect their property and other things with their fists and their feet there. It just doesn't work out with the mob of people. But now they're really telling people that, if you're a certain race, which happens to be white males between a certain age, that you can't even get treated because more susceptible, um, you know, uh, uh, more susceptible groups need the medication in the first place. Now, I'm not agreeing for or against you getting treated for any sickness you might have, but think about the time that we've went through in this country to change things to where they were supposed to be at a equal state for all citizens, and now they are what I call balkanizing the United States, where they have so many people cornered in these little boxes with echo chambers where they just talk to people that have similar views than them. And they're priming this whole nation for something like escaping LA or something like that, and I kind of called it about the fire departments and the police departments not being at full capacity in New York. That same weekend that they did that, people were throwing cocktails in businesses over, just disputes at work. So the people know when the government is no longer looking out for them and they exploit it. And that's the time we're moving in. Fortunately, a lot of like-minded people in our echo chamber have been preparing for just such a time. It's just a wonder what side of the government's going to fall on your legal behavior. Like it's really hard to know what will be legal next week. You know what I'm saying? They're trying to outlaw money, outlaw where you spend money. They're demonizing other ways to make money, and it just boils down to maybe we should all practice. I want to say practice. It's really happening, but you can practice your survival strategies that you've had for the past 10 or 20 years that you've been planning on. Right now is a good time to put those into effect and see, you know, what works and what doesn't work, and find the loopholes in your own logic problems, because you're going to find all kinds of things that you didn't think you were going to prepare for. Like right now, I'm trying to rig up my life where I don't need any external help. And that would be like completely feeding ourselves, housing ourselves, heating ourselves, and all of that without the utilities. And that's a really hard thing to do, evidently. You know, you have to fight with the laws and the regulations. And if you so happen to live out in the middle of nowhere, you have to deal with nature itself and physical problems of where you live, getting the resources you need set up there to be self-sufficient. It's a lot harder task than people kind of act like, you know, they might have 30 days worth of storable goods or something. And they're like, oh, we're good, we're prepared. Not really. That's really kind of a joke, actually. What will happen is you'll eat all that up, and then you'll be at square one, and you'll realize that there's all these other angles of things you didn't think of. And you were speaking of earthquakes and stuff, and we know that we're going into a geologic time. So if you live in those areas, you're probably prepared for earthquakes, but are you really prepared for a real disaster where the grid actually turns off for weeks or months at a time? And we're looking at that happening this winter. And that's not even from natural disasters. That's just from people playing with supposed supposed carbon rules and who can provide energy and how much and how often. And we're about to see some practice runs by the government. So you might as well be practicing too. Uh, I think this is going to be the dark winter that they were talking about. And they're going to put a lot of propaganda out there to tell you things are great while it's happening. So, you know, you can see the gas prices skyrocketing, food skyrocketing. So if you're not prepared, I don't know what to tell you. I guess you should have been.
Wood is heavy. I'll say that for you. Wood is heavy. So you think a cord of wood will get you through like a Colorado winter? Not a chance. But you know what? You going recycling back to, you know, those AI cars that you said could possibly take you off to you know, they could just lock the doors and drive you wherever they wanted to, COVID facility. But it wouldn't put it past to have some sort of tube in there where then they could just like plug in and gas the car with you in there, complying or not. Just the snap top and plug the tube in and it fills right up. And okay, good for the next 2 weeks. Go home. Your social credit score is reinvigorated. You know, like there's all kind of weird things to think about what they could do with these cars. If you're not in control of it, it can be taken anywhere and anything done to it. Oh, we'll just drop it in a pond. You know, like what? Jeez, scary. But
Michael Hastings.
You'll have to explain that one. But you know, you were talking about the white guy being denied medical care at the hospital to give to other peoples of color. See, the way I look at it now is there's not going to be enough food to feed everybody, and there's a concerted effort here to get rid of a lot of people. So that's not about somebody of color and a white person. Now, that's a distraction. You're looking at it, two birds, one stone. Because if they're trying to depopulate, you know, these elitists know these cycles better than anybody. They have the best records going back that detail these cycles out, probably hundreds of thousands of years, dozens of ice ages, versus what we have in this little bit of time. We're looking back like 10, 12,000 years. That's nothing. That's like our modern age that they use to prove global warming. It's only 100 and plus years out of those 12,000 or 100,000. The same things. Like, what if you had cycle information going back 200, 300, 400,000 years, 500,000 years? You would know exactly what's going to happen right now. So if there's not going to be enough food, you want as many people gone. So then deny medical care. I don't care who it is, what it is, but you deny medical care. That's okay, -1. And then, oh, the person who was going to get the medical care, we're going to give them the new jab. Okay, -2. You know, and it's just like whatever angle it is to get rid of people. It's it's nefarious, it's dark, it's scary, and I'm glad I'm not on that side believing that type of solution is correct, because man, that is some bad karmatic energy to pay. Because again, when you're looking at these elitists, they understand that removing 2 physical carbon-based bodies off this earth, those souls are going to recycle back in as new reborn babies back into the new cycle later. So they've already lived or outlived their usefulness here on the planet at the moment. Okay, somebody's that sick they can't even work or contribute to the system. They need to be going anywhere. You know, these eugenicists are always talking about this. How long have they gone back in history talking about we need to, anybody that's not useful needs to be, you know, they were talking about euthanized or whatever back in the day. So now look what they're doing. So then too frail to work. All right, well, bye-bye. Doesn't matter. They wanted to have that person gone anyway. So it's a karmatic cycle. And you know, these people pushing this energy, I wouldn't want to be in their karmatic cycle. But that's truly the way that we're looked at here. The way that you would look at an ant or maybe a mosquito and crush it, literally, is the way we're being looked at. It's a farmed planet. And you're going to be on your own here, because I just see the way my eyes have been opened recently to what this truly is with this AI and these, say, darker powers that are in your face now, that are super visible, that weren't visible before. Like literally everybody's starting to see it right now. Everybody's starting to see it. And it's going to be just they're going to burn the entire chessboard down, because it doesn't matter. You're going to be karmically recycled into the next rebirth. The system needs to change anyway, because the frequency is going higher into an Aquarian energy. Everything's going to vibrate faster. So the old top-down structure is not going to continue. The fiat currency system is not going to continue. Any kind of supply chain delivery on long distances isn't going to continue. The mineral resourcing, mining, oil, etc., those rely on those same distribution chains where there just won't be enough people to even keep it at break even. So the house card is going to collapse anyway, right? There are going to still be a few people out there. Like there's still a few Sasquatch running around. Were those the originals? And we're kind of the result of that over time, over 1 million years of being karmatically recycled into a different control system, a different genetic system. But the original inhabitants that took off to the forest and were the survivors on their own, decided to get out of the system, they're still out in the forest. Because something has survived and chose not to go this direction every single cycle of this iteration. Every 400 years, 3,100 years, 12,000 years, full ice age, 100,000 years. Something stayed outside of that cycle of control this whole time. That's why it's still a base species. I don't know, the world, and again, I'll say it again. Wood is heavy. If you're going to start stacking wood, and you have, here's my, I'll finish with this one last thought about emergency preparedness. I got a very large yurt tent with a heating stove for the camping tent that uses wood. So with the glass paneled sides, you'll have your light in the tent, you'll have your heat in the tent during the winter, and you can cook. And there's an attachment there where it uses the heat coming off the flue to boil the water or keep your water at almost boiling temperature, in a separate attachment that doesn't interfere with your cook space. Because you could live in there, because we have septic, so it doesn't matter. You're not relying on city water as much, and there's ponds near us. So to be able to have the heat and cook those storable foods you're talking about, even in a situation where the power go out for 2 weeks or something in the wintertime, below 0 temperatures, it wouldn't really matter. The only time you'd really get cold is you have to go to the bathroom, but you could, do like the grandparents did, wait to the warmest time of the day or whatever. We're definitely entering some strange times, we truly are. And I think there's a lot of possibility for humanity, though, moving through this. An enormous amount of people are waking up. Now, can we use our innate abilities increasing at the same time of mental manifestation, thought manifestation, to like lessen what's about to happen so we can come up with solutions? I don't know. I don't have the answer.
I think we can. do that. We just got to keep in mind what's reality. And I kind of sent you that quote from Klaus Schwab, where they're admitting basically that they're going to start a new propaganda campaign. And I mean, think of the name of it, the Great Narrative or the
I
Great
know that's
Story,
scary. So let me set that
right?
aside there. How much change has happened because of COVID? They're planning the exact same amount of change with narrative of everybody kowtowing and absolutely agreeing the exact same thought, which rolls right into this manifestation capability as the sun steps down and our innate abilities. See, they're trying to get everybody resonating with what they want, so we create the planet for them and their image. That's scary.
Yeah, it's definitely scary because you also know that they're giving us one narrative and they're showing us one imagination of the future, but they have a totally different one in store for us. And here's a quote from Klaus Schwab: "In order to shape the future, you have to first imagine the future, and then you have to design the future, and then you have to execute it." And basically, if you watch this speech that he was really cozying up to the Arab nations there, and talking about how that they needed to control not only the narrative going out from the media, but to curb all of the other information that's out there. So they are actively saying that they want to get rid of any second opinion, and it'll only be their great narrative for their great reset. The problem is that there's just so much information out there, but it doesn't seem like they care anymore. They tell us these fables right to our face, and with a straight face they do it. But it makes you wonder, how much thought goes into naming these objective waves or attacks against the public. And like you said, it's a whole new thing that they're calling the Great New Narrative, and it'll be a blueprint for governments to accelerate their propaganda, and get a stranglehold on any news organizations or journalists that don't kowtow to them or cow down or bow down to them. And look at what's going on with Project Veritas. You can see the future of our country, and people just thought that they had a First Amendment right, not only to the press but to speak. And it's so weird that we're changing positions with Russia right now. It's bizarre to me because I grew up, in the Cold War and all the propaganda about the Reds and the Russians and the communists and all of that. And I agree. I don't like the communist system. And, with a little more research, you kind of find out that that was a controlled system at the beginning of our system to be an opposite side to it. And now they're trying to flip it. I was listening to Putin in his speech. It was a couple of weeks ago where he was talking about, how societies needed to be more free. And he brought up the Bolshevik Revolution, and he was saying that's exactly what's destroying America. And then when you look over here and we're supposed to be the good guys, and you see the FBI and all of these letter agencies attacking the citizens and attacking news organizations that don't go along with the mainstream of things, you see the strings being pulled, and you actually see that we've already kind of converted, and you see the banks all lining up in a row to side with China. And China's openly announcing that basically, their wealth has surpassed American wealth, and now they are the superpower of the world. A lot of people are, arguing that fact, but it's not really that hard to imagine that they are. They still have a manufacturing platform. We don't. They're building their military up as fast as we can debate about, whose bathroom we need to use over here. And Russia itself is cleaning up their society. Like they're promoting people to drink less, to not to take foreign medications because of different things that they talk about. We can't get into because we're on the wrong side of things. We're on the side of things where you have to worry about possibly in the near future being dragged off to one of these Chinese style re-education camps. And we know that the Weather Underground openly planned that in the 80s. You can go research that yourself, and you'll find out those same characters took office like 2 presidents ago, and basically they're still in charge now. So we're in the full color revolution, as they called it, to destroy everything that we are and reset it from the bottom up, in a more communist Marxist style. And we have to fight it. And the only way I know how to do that is just to continue to do business as usual. Stop doing business with people that bow down to these trends of mandates and social justice warrior stuff, and just do business with people that give you good service, good products at a good price. And that's the fundamentals of a free market. And it's also the foundation of what grew the United States, is having choice in buying stuff. And not only that, kind of punishing the bad store for having bad service and bad products or whatever it is. And we can still do that. Again, it's like America has forgot that there's a thing called customer service. And if you've ever called any of these companies, from the phone service to a product, you'll know that there is no such thing as customer service anymore. You call and talk to a robot. And if you do finally get to a human being, they're very aggressive and not on your side. So they're not customer service in any stretch of the idea. I think that there's a new renaissance coming, though, of people that are just tired of the push. And like you said, a lot of people are waking up, and that's why Klaus Schwab and the gang and the communist gang there is trying to create a new narrative for you to believe. And they're going to be hammering us with this the whole next year. I just can't wait to see what juicy fictionalizations they come up with for us to believe.
Well, that's if there's something to buy. You know, we're going to go through this period here. Now, I don't know how deep and how lack of goody it'll get. And I want to say goods, yeah. But at the moment right now, it seems that over the last year, it's been a very concerted, slow takeaway of available goods. And if you do want to get it, it's incredibly expensive. You know, used cars are, going for more than the original price they paid. Well, that should be, at least in some way, keeping equal value, because, the car dealerships would rob you blind. You drive it off the lot and it's worth 50% of what 2 minutes ago it was when you bought it. So when you see those start to things, okay, well, it is coming back to real market again. Okay, well, I'll pay for a car that's still pretty good, nearly as much as you paid, because I can't really get one and it still works and it's still a good value. Compared to car dealers that'll say, we'll give you 2 cents on the dollar for that. Things are coming back into equilibrium again, where companies are going to be cut out a lot of things, where people are going to go person to person, because you got to think about how much stuff was there over the last 20 years that's here in the U.S. already. Might not be new, but still might be damn good, like a grill, for example, even one of those cylinders that you need to refill the propane. I mean, there's a lot of stuff around in the United States here that's been collected over the last 20, 30 years. Now it just needs to be people finding people that have what they need and trade amongst like that. We need to cut the stores out of it anyway. This might buy us a little time to be able to recalibrate to start to get manufacturing if we could start just going through our own personal things and then finding out who in the communities also would like that needs that, would trade something for it. Because it seems that all, the repricing of food's coming up again right this month. They're going to reprice everything before Thanksgiving. And then again, was a March of 2022, they're going to reprice everything again. So as we're moving forward, it seems like the fiat currency is going to be struggling more and more next year. If they're going to reprice twice, wholesale food costs and then manufactured foods into the supermarkets, and they're already looking at 15% this first price rise, which would be a stand. It's across the board. It's probably the things for like the dates and the moon cakes and stuff. But in actuality, something you're going to buy is going to go up 50 times in price, but they'll do the average of 15%. So I don't know, what will there be to buy in the stores left? That's the question. And at what point can people that are taking bribes from other people to stay quiet about certain things, the money they're getting isn't buying anything, so it's not worth the person who's being bribed to continue with upholding the lie or the whatever the narrative that was supposed to be, because there's nothing there, even the money, there's nothing, no goods and no money either, both. So what's the purpose of continuing with what I would get from bribery, like all these politicians and different heads of, organizations do. When we come off this fiat system, there's going to have to be a different set of asset that will be tradable for something else, or else that's not the motivation to keep quiet and continuing the lies in the narrative. And maybe there'll be a break there, Ransom, I'm not sure. But speaking of breaks, 2 minutes and 2 seconds. I'm your host, David Dubine, Ransom Godwin, 420 TV, Freedomist Films. Chatting about happy future. Come on back in 2 minutes, 2 seconds. We're going to continue our conversation. What's value moving into the new world?
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Be evasive, but that doesn't mean that they're telling the truth as opposed to fiction.
And Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, and there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came unto the daughters of men, indicating that there were giants before the Nephilim.
And sons of God, plural. They weren't talking about Jesus coming down.
No, that's right. Yeah.
I'm Steve Crawford, host of Factor Theory Live. Join me every Sunday night from 10 p.m. till midnight Eastern Standard Time on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Check it out.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Galactic Interstellar Council on Revolution Radio Studio A, Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Join us as we traverse the starseed paradigm, as expressed in the time-space continuum that we know as the divine expression of love and light. Integrating this conscious unity into the galactic paradigm. So welcome all, both terrestrial beings and galactic beings as one. So be it. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
If you think for 1 second that the Capitol will ever treat us fairly, you are lying to yourselves. Because we know who they are and what they do. This is what they do, and we must fight back. You can torture us and bomb us. Fire is catching. And if we burn, you burn with us.
Good evening.
Are you awake yet? I hope. We've tried and we've tried for years and years to use passive resistance and loud voices to make a change. The time is over. Your governments around the world have no other goal than to decimate your entire existence at the hands of the bankers and the elites. The war is coming, and it's your choice to decide if you want to be a warrior or a victim. Denial is not a choice anymore. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the planet. Not giving up. Revolution Radio. All right. Thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
And welcome back to the second hour of Mini Ice Age Conversations. Ransom Godwin 420, excuse me, Ransom Godwin 420 TV Freedomist Films joining me tonight. Excuse me, I was drinking some water right here on a break and like super quick trying to finish to press the microphone button to get back on time.
Cool.
Ransom, yeah, can you take over for a second?
Yeah. Actually, not to be depressing, but I was listening to you when you were closing out before the break. And we were talking about this free market kind of that we could do without, the big stores and everything. And you were talking about a lot of the older cars out there and used cars. And it just gave me this idea. If you remember Russia in the 90s, that all they had is those old 50s everything, Yugos, and all of that stuff. And I hope that that's not where we go. However, it does point out that we can make it. There is enough. And besides that, there's nothing wrong with the older style cars. Actually, in the right way, if the government would let us, you could make a gasoline powered, engine burn almost nothing and get super amount of miles per gallon. They've just never let us do that. And you were talking about these liquid fuels. I've actually been reading a lot about that. And when I read about that, a lot of it is associated with new types of spacecraft that either China, Russia, or the United States are coming up with. And that brings me to another thing. So I have this little, I guess it's like a hobby to read, stuff that they're doing, scientific stuff. So I've been reading a lot about these chimeras that they're all the way from humanizing mice to actually having embryos of half human, half rabbit, half chimpanzee, etc. You name it. There's no telling, how far some of these projects go. But I came across another kind of research that they're doing with monkeys, and that is to test how they'll deal with high altitude and zero gravity. Now, it doesn't seem like a big deal because we have all these space programs. You would assume that they were doing stuff like this, but what they're doing is really complicated, tapping right into the brain's neurons and finding out. So there's only one reason that they would be doing this, and that is because they plan on using humans, obviously, in low Earth orbit or other things. And they've been announcing also in the news, not really admitting that life is on Mars and Venus, but admitting that the compounds and the chemicals are present that usually are associated with life. So they're kind of giving a soft disclosure that we're about to start mining the solar system, which brings us back to this robotic revolution. Now, evidently, these robots can't be trusted to do certain things. They're just not that advanced, or I put it that they are that advanced, and the people, the elite of the world, I think, are on the cusp of losing control of their control because they put too much faith into these AIs. There's an AI that controls our nuclear arsenal here, and I bring that up a lot because that's another one of those predictive programming things you wouldn't think was real because you saw it in a movie, that old 80s movie War Games, and probably more recent with the Terminator movies. But that's a real thing. They really have an AI that they trust more than a human being. So it makes you wonder what place in this new, I guess, civilization do humans actually fit in? And it seems like we're not part of the builders of it any longer. They've already got to that point. We have so much technology that we're at that point where people don't really need governments and meters anymore. I mean, there's plenty of technology that we could go to the next level, but it seems more like kind of what you said earlier, that we're actually the product of this new civilization. And then that gets you into a whole nother idea. Like, what is it that human beings are valuable for other than, taking advantage of, in weird ways? But that's just one little portion of it. So what really would we be if we're a product? And it's kind of scary because
Ransom, could I stop you and ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, in that transition where you're talking about where they won't need so many humans based on AI, what's the most needed skills or industries where humans would still be integral part that right now, even as we know it, the tech that we see right now, let's say it's 50 years advanced, still wouldn't be able to have that human component in it. I mean, it'll be a slow lead out, you know, you'll start to see the drones, then you'll hear them overhead like you hear traffic next to the roads. There'll be major drone thoroughways that like airport runways or like highways, but they'll be over your head. Uh, so what are the most needed skills and industries do you think moving into this time of automation and robotics replacing humans?
Well, I don't think it's actually us thinking. There's, so much stuff in society that shows that they don't want us really thinking. But when you get into the technological aspect of the human being, we're going into a matrix style thing, maybe not for energy, but we are great, I would say thumb drives. We're basically will be the component of a thumb drive, where we're stored, the energy is stored in us. And it's not even, we're not even in the realm of fiction anymore, because as you know, Elon Musk and several other companies are coming up with products to directly link you to a non-human network of information. Now, obviously, they don't actually know how that's going to work out as far as the masses, but I'm assuming they already know how that's going to work out with a human being, because they've shown us they've connected a pig. They can make the pig do all kinds of stuff like a remote control animal. They've proved that, they can hook it to a monkey. He could play a game and get rewards all day. And we're not much different than that. So it does make you wonder, what kind of product are we? And it seems like the product that we are is either a food source for someone else. Now, I know that's really far out there, or they're just using us for a necessary component in the singularity of artificial intelligence. I think there's things in the human mind that they can't program. So instead of programming it, they're trying to leap forward by connecting the two and letting the artificial intelligence decode the human brain and use it instead of us using the network. That's kind of my point. I think we're actually the hard drives of the future.
Yeah, it's like going through a factory and getting a reset. Okay, next, it's the next, it's the plan. So if you're going back to the pig for a second, to disconnect the pig, it's all wired up and they're remote controlling the responses in the pig to make its physical body move. So at what point do they disconnect the pig where they can do that with the remote control on, an app on an iPhone or handheld set? Because Boston Dynamics, remember when they came out with the robots and it was the old clunky ones and they were totally attached to everything. And now you got them where they're doing parkour and jumping and, absolutely mind-bending feats of what you thought was possible in robotics, to being attached to like, oh, that thing's harmless, so it can only work as attached. And now it's, running and doing flips off of buildings and landing on a broomstick upright. These kind of broomstick handle thickness, jumping off of a 4-foot thing and landing the most perfect Olympic landing you've ever seen, like thunk perfectly. Whoa, wait a second, man. Where did that disconnect come from? Because you disconnected it from on the wires and they were that was the feed in. All these things are safe. They can only ever be on, look how slow they move. And they came out with that first one. Like, it's all like 1950s science fiction movie. Oh, that's the one they presented first. And now, they upgrade. So when are they going to disconnect this tech when they can run your brain? Like they can run a Boston Dynamics robot, how many years in the future?
0, because the wired connection is only the implant. After that, all of their little experiments are almost always wireless. So any person that decides to take this, and this isn't the only kind of implant that they're kind of trying to sell. There's medical implants of all different kinds. And this brings up the subject of backdoors, and, you can use these things for nefarious purposes. But obviously, if you can see a company control a mammal with that's pretty high on the intelligence chart compared to humans, a pig is pretty smart. So if they can control it like an automaton, I would say that that year is right now. So they're fully capable of controlling the masses with a direct connection, or at least as many people as they can get to do it. And the way that people are now, and we'll circle back to compliance, people are very compliant. So if there's some kind of new, outbreak, as Bill Gates is trying to tell WHO in China that, he really likes their totalitarian style of government and taking care of the pandemic. So you can see that these people already are on a control trip, and it wouldn't be much more for them to tell you that, there's this new, now that all your kids got these implants, there's a new virus out there, a computer virus, because, Bill Gates is actually known for building a super great computer empire with all kinds of softwares and programs. And we always had to continually update because, viruses. And then all of a sudden we let this guy into healthcare. You can say what you want about that, but that's kind of funny. So if you get all of these companies and they're pushing these things, people won't even know that they're being automatons in the first place. And in this way,
like we took the mobile
slowly...
phones to be, look at how we took the mobile phones and we got our own tracking devices to be, we embraced them. Crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just the next step, and it's kind of an obvious next step that they're going to connect us directly. And then at that point, there will be propaganda on a level that you can't even imagine. You won't just feel like you don't like something or agree with something. You will just agree with it, and you will feel either lethargic about thinking about it, or you just will feel nothing for a certain subject, and you will no longer get mad. And they've already tested all these things in a military setting about making people feel a certain way with frequencies. But now we have a direct connect. And I don't think that the computers could ever actually affect us in the way that they wanted until they got that wired connection directly into our neural net. And it's really similar to the way the medical profession keeps pushing these procedures to break the blood-brain barrier for whatever reason. Something that they told us for a long time is not a good idea, because you get, different kinds of infections, virus, bacteria, etc., into your brain that you don't want there. So this is doing essentially the exact same thing, except for now there's technological pathogens. And we already know there's, I don't know how many geneticist companies that have shown and told us that you can put DNA in a computer and 3D print it out into something that you can deliver into the tissue of an organism. And in that way, you can put an entire computer program or a parasitical virus, whatever you want to call it, right into people. And we're at that point. And while everybody's distracted about hunger and property, it's the perfect time for them to give us a new narrative where everybody needs to be connected to the cult, basically, so that, and you already see how they're acting.
Why should I be connected? Why? Tell me why.
For your safety, to protect all of your passwords, to protect your medical information.
I'll take care of myself. I'll take care of myself.
Yeah.
I'll even sign a paper. I'll take care of myself. Leave me out of it.
Well, then you're an outlier, and that's the people that they're
killing me.
That
I'm saving you money and resources.
Kind of going after. Yeah, you would think it would go that way, but I'm predicting here in the next year, you're going to see the first healthcare company that wants to put implants that has data on it, kind of taking traction where people are actually volunteering for it at first. They want to be safe.
No, but I see what you're talking about, the distraction. Yeah, when it comes to hunger, okay, your football team, your city, different countries, different races, that all means nothing when you're hungry. So that's kind of when it comes down to the final boiling point of, okay, they distracted enough people, and actually I should say divided, not even distracted. There are these different means of what you see in society, from either power authority like judges, or just economic strata where somebody's a billionaire or millionaire, worker, whatever it is. There's all these kind of labels that are given for the amount of money made, and that stratifies the places you're living in, the restaurants you used to frequent, museums or whatnot, the charity organizations, all these things that used to mean something that separated. And I think that, look at the last 100 years, there's been a lot of, we might think it's intense now, but it's been an ongoing thing for what, probably three, I would say call it 300 years of separating people based on X, Y, or Z plug in. But in the last 100, it's become really prolific, but now it's even speeding up in almost like an instantaneous fashion. It's not like it's just happening now. This has been going on. It's just kind of a culmination right now. It's an apex happening at super light speed. But when people get hungry, all that goes away. See, that comes back to the same thing. Yeah, thanks for reminding me. The exact same thing at the end of the last hour. Bribery works because you're giving the people that will be quiet or change the narrative for you money that has value so they can go buy something with it that enhances their lives or has fun, so they continue to be allegiant to you, to then take your bribery money to then keep the same narrative. Because in that circulation of agreement, I guess, words are said, money's paid. Money has value. Money can go buy something. But that's going away. Fiat's going away. And the ability to buy just stuff, because the supply chain is having a lot of problems getting even things like cars. A lot of that bribe money would be used to buy a new race car, there's a lot of laws in countries where it's not as strict as here. So they go buy a flashy new car, you go right. They can't even get a used washing machine because the part that they need that's computer driven in the washing machine, they can't get it. And it's an old used washing machine. You can't even get that basic part. So now the money's worth nothing and they can't get any goods. So what's the use of keeping the narrative and the lies going? I have no more allegiance. It buys me nothing. So these changes are going to come. They're going to come. Once the people get hungry and the bribery stops and they're no longer paid for narrative, people stop working too. At that point, what happens? Hungry people, they do just see they're going to knock it all the way down to hunger now. This is, like you said, you're right. The distraction of hunger could allow that AI to jump right on top of that desperate situation as a savior for it. Could it not?
Absolutely. I think that's the angle that they're actually going to be going, is that these new implants can help you with medical care that you wouldn't believe, like stopping Alzheimer's disease or expanding your life, giving you life extending drugs. And then when you compare that with the way that they're trying to switch from the needle over to a constant pill, you can kind of see that the direction that they're going, where they're going to be offering the people with a good credit score and the people that are the compliers a longer life. There's a movie, I forget the name of it, that has Justin Timberlake in it. And the currency there is in the movie is a crypto type of currency that is time itself. So people don't die, they don't get sick, they don't do
the
whatever.
Time
as
Bank.
long as
I saw that
have,
movie. The
yeah,
digital
and they
Time
have all
Bank.
this
Yeah, that
time.
one.
And you saw in there that like the ghetto's full of people dying and doing whatever, and they're just working the day to earn enough time to just be alive one more day and have stuff. But the richer people are just living it up because they have the implant with plenty of time on it. And I think that's what they're going to try to sell on the people that kind of come out the other end of I'm going to say a culling, because that's what's happening. People of certain age groups and demographics are just dying off, and it's going to continue to happen. But there will be a healthy class of people that want to stay healthy, and they're willing to pay for a pill every month and, an implant to keep them connected to the system, so they'll no longer have to wait at the airport, and they won't have to wait, for medical treatment, because all of their information's instant. They're going to divide the society in a way that it's either the have or the have not, and you'll have no choice but to either be on one side of that. And I think that's what they're going to do. Is first, we have to have some bad times so that they can come in as the hero. So they're going to give people hunger. They're going to give people a whole stretch of bad health care. So as you know, right now, a lot of the hospitals and stuff aren't treating certain things. They're concentrated on this pandemic. So that's totally uprooted the whole medical industry. You no longer have doctors that will work for you. They'll tell on you instead. So when you want a certain kind of medication because you don't want a different kind of medication, they're gonna give you static and grief about that. And it's going to be set up where you can't even help other people, because then you'll be breaking the law. You'll be giving medical treatment to those without a license. So they're going to be the only source for not only the food, but the medicine, the entertainment, everything. And that's what all of these guys are talking about. And
We're back to
before they
burning
do
witches
that,
then. We're back to burning
Yeah.
witches. That's exactly right. All the people with the knowledge were
Exactly.
removed.
yeah,
All the
'cause they
healers
have
were removed at that time under
disinformation.
that same guise of being possessed or being a witch.
And I think that's what happened last time. And I kind of brought this up before. I think that's where these mystery schools actually started. There were some that were the ones controlling, but then there was other groups that were doing it to save their knowledge because they knew that the society was about to turn on people that know things. So if you know, mechanic work, or ways to get around these AIs and stuff, you're going to be enemy number one. People aren't going to like they're not going to like you because you can help people live without the system. So I think we're really going there, and it's going to, they're going to not incrementalize like they have in the past. I feel like they have a time that they're working for, and that's why everything is progressively and exponentially moving faster towards it.
Yeah, this AI seemed like it's going to take over everything and offer itself as a solution. But the economy needs to go first and then the healthcare. They don't want you off the system. You brought up that point. Like, okay, leave me alone. I'll opt out of everything. All I need to do is use the roads and the water. Okay, and I'll help pay for the fire department, the garbage, and everything else for the community services, but that's all I really need. And if I fly in an airplane, I already get charged huge taxes. That's from the city, state, whatever. I'll pay just the taxes to use the roads. And I don't mean a damn road tax. I mean one fee that's like $50 a year to use the roads, and I'll be happy to do that. And I want out of the system. That's it. That's all I require is just roads so I can, and the telephone poles to get some electricity. Okay, great. The basics. It's like getting a phone card. I just want the SIM card to be able to make phone calls. That's it. Right? Same thing. That's all I want from society is I need this just basic SIM card. I'll take care of the rest of it, but opt me out of everything. I don't want the full pay in on everything on services I don't use. So the healthcare is one of those things, but you got to smash the economy first and take what purchasing power there was out of any dollar left. I think it's like a cent compared to 1913. I was watching Cliff High, and that was the thing I brought up earlier. He was saying that just the people that are getting out of the system because of healthcare and economic choice or non-choice, that institutions you think are and used to working all the time are going to be at such low staff that they're barely going to be able to keep the door open. That's how many people are leaving the system. Like the shakeup that's coming is all encompassing. Because that healthcare system, again, if you're going to try to cull, you don't want that working at all. Because by mandating something for the doctors and surgeons and nurses and whoever else is there, chiropractors, anybody who has a profession in a practice in a hospital or at a hospital as a staff, it's like you already know these outcomes, what's going to happen. It's not a surprise that you thought people would quit and say no. Like that was already baked into the equation. For the greatest result with whatever the input was. That's already baked in. So what was that percent that already counted on that people just say, no, I'm quitting? Because this video I just did tonight over on the Adapt 2030 channel, and I'm not trying to plug it and be like, everybody run to Adapt 2030. I talked about the fertilizer shortage that was inbound because the fertilizer producers themselves talking about natural gas price increases, the cutoff of natural gas in certain areas of the world, and the supply chain deliveries that we understand right now happening and then add on top, not enough people to barely keep the door open. Yeah, get a repair crew out there. Oh, we don't have enough people to, we got to have at least somebody to turn on the boiler. They can't go out and fix stuff, like that guy. So where's it going to, you're going to have to go pioneering lifestyle on this, I should say. Because we're going to have to start trading again, I would be willing to do that. Okay, new car, used car, whatever. as long as we can get through this and get new food growing strategies, set up a new energy system, remove the central banks, get back to where all the money's within the communities in our pockets with no damn taxes taken out, and we reset it that way, where fair value is fair value, and you don't devalue the means of payment like the Federal Reserve has done, snatching a cent right off the presses the day number one. It's only 99 cents worth of purchasing power after the Fed laid their grubby hands on it in 1913. That first dollar printed, the debt was subtracted out, and you only had 99 cents of purchasing power day one when that thing began. So you already, that kind of reset for the power of banking, et cetera. No, never again. Things can be set on different asset bases. But the economy is going to be reset. That's how they're going to get everybody to the hunger thing. Okay, but going to the hunger thing is going to create more of the healthcare thing. And then it's going to ping pong back and forth like it does every grand solar minimum. Healthcare, not so good. People decide to move. There's a lot of movement. Then a lot of starvation in between that. And people were infighting. There were too many people in one town and not another. And it was quite a different world. If you look back at the history going back and seeing how populations moved because of these exact same things. Economy is terrible. Healthcare is no good. Can't grow food, can't buy food, can't earn an income enough to buy anything because there's nothing there to buy anyway, even if you had the money. We're out of here. A lot of people are going to be moving around the planet. And again, that comes right back into the healthcare because people get sicker if they don't have the nutrients, if they're moving around, their bodies are tired. But at the same time, how are these people all going to move around and do this when the economy is crashed? And then they're going to be walking down the streets like you see so many instances of across history where the only time it hasn't happened, the only time is like in America now in our modern society that it's never happened, where people have to actually pick up and walk down the road with a wheelbarrow, a cart of some sort, because your petrol would run out eventually, and you start to see these things like, look at the pictures of post-World War II. People really went down the roads like that. Look at pictures of Vietnam. You look at any of these places, the war-torn imagery was good with photographers. You see it everywhere. Is it going to come down to that in the U.S., people fleeing out of Canada, and they can only push what they have over the borders? This is an insane time we're going into here. And the faster this evolves, can we evolve with it? Because if you have the belief like in Cuba, remember they were all into the whole, utopia, if you will, for a better term, in Cuba. So people believed in the dream for, okay, we're going to stay off the system and 20 years, 10 years, like we would go into now. Let's reuse everything. We'll trade amongst ourselves. Yeah, we can use used cars for a little while until we get our own production back. And do we really need as many? You got the usefulness of the car needs to last like it did in our grandparents' time, where it lasted a lifetime. If you bought one, it lasted a lifetime. Not now you buy one and it's broken down and you need another one in 5 years. And every repair part, the door handle broke after 2,000 times of opening it. Oops. Like real fair value with real usability, quality of life. People believed in that dream in Cuba for such a long time, right? Could you do it? Because here's the thing. When you go down there and you hear these stories and you've seen the pictures of Cuba, you're talking the same thing, like 20 years behind in the tech. So somebody's driving a 1950s car in 1970 because they could only get the 20-year-old automobile. Well, people are like, right now, let's get through the solutions. We can do that for a little while, but then we want to come back out and we'll get this prosperity back and fire up everything again. But then there's always some kind of nefarious dictator, Stalinist, Marxist kind of thing at the top, written down, oh no, I took too much power, I can't give it back now. Oh, you got to stay locked down. Like, then people get really pissed after another generation, like, wait, we did it to help y'all, and now you're still, what kind of world are we going into, do you think? I'm kind of baffled at the moment.
Well, evidently Singapore's, they got it figured out. They want to have eyeballs everywhere. So I sent you a copy of this article. It's talking about how Singapore's going to be a tech utopia, but it's also a surveillance state nightmare. So they're talking about robot dogs enforcing social distancing, flying taxis, all of that. They already have 24-hour AI shuttles that go back and forth through the city. But this article talks about how they get to this. It's like a real utopia where, you know, these robots and stuff will take care of the elderly and help everybody out. And it's so wonderful.
But that picture's the same thing I saw as the Jetsons. I'm sorry. The picture I'm looking at is the same exact picture that I saw of the Jetsons back in the day. Exactly the same.
Yeah.
Meet George Jetson.
Yeah, they're trying to sell this idea in Singapore. So I think this is kind of the way that they're going. They're going to sell the idea of everybody having, you know, good food delivered to them, and it's going to be right there. The robots will take care of the old people, and, you know, drones will, you know, service freighters and all of this cool stuff. Everything will be staffed by machines. But then they talk about how would they do that, and the only way to do that is to super monitor every single human being so that they could remain safe, of course.
Okay,
and
wait, stop.
basically,
But you're telling me this image here. See, that's old and clunky. I can't even buy that with those, you know, propellers on the helicopter or whatever that drone is, because at least in George Jetson they were using magnetic motors, so there was no sound and it shot out like this clunky thing. They're taking you back in time. See, they're offering you a solution like, oh, it's a drone. But what about the anti-gravitics and the anti-gravity technology we have to get these small craft moving, also using no power? Well, I mean, Earth's magnetic field, but not like fuel as we understand it. It uses the Earth's magnetic field to drive itself, to create the power for itself to move through third dimensional space. That image is insulting with that stuff on. That's ridiculously insulting to have a drone with 5 or 6 propellers on it when we don't even need that. See, they're taking us off. That the image kind of, they portray it as the future, but it's the past. It's old. It's already archaic. It's not even, that's like 16th generation behind what's available now. That they're offering you as the newest solution is the 16th generation back. No, I want today's newest model, and they're giving you something from 12, 15 years ago. No. See, if we're going to reset stuff, electrogravitics and these kind of anything propeller driven doesn't. Why would you waste the resources to even put that thing on there? You don't need it. Magnetism, weightless travel. You don't need all that shit on it. You need the housing. You could probably just do aluminum.
Yeah, well, it's obviously meant to not let people go that far or do anything, because what you're talking about is George Jetson. You know, he had a little spacecraft, and if he wanted to leave the planet, he just took off. What they're really giving you is more cages, more limitations. And if you've ever traveled internationally, you realize what a pain in the butt it's become. They've done everything that they can to make it the most inconvenient, uncomfortable experience possible. And
you're building it up.
They try to they rush you through there. But, you know, if you have the right chip in your head, you can get on one of these little flights. You know, basically, like you said, it's just a battery and a propeller. And it does make you wonder why they won't give us anything past a certain technological state. And I think the reason is because they don't want us building things that, you know, we could just leave without them. Basically, if we were at that level. And it's the same answer as why we can't have power at our homes that doesn't cost a fortune and destroy the planet. It's because they want to continue to meter us, and they're going to do that until they get a chip in your head. And besides that, it's not realistic to think people are going to fly around in these drones if we keep, you know, preventing CO2 from going in the air. I mean, the air is going to become so thin from not allowing anything to happen. I've been wondering when they're going to start fining countries for having volcanoes on them. You know, just go to that country and tell them, you know, you guys can't have tech over here because, well, you got that volcano there, and we're outlawing plant food so people can't grow food. Oops, is that why it is? I think it is.
But see, then you're talking about, no, we're going to go back to this drone, because that image you're showing me. Okay, so the title of the article here is Singapore's Tech Utopia Dream is Turning into a Surveillance State Nightmare. Okay, so go back to the 1960s and go into your search engine and find a picture of George Jetson and take a look at the era of time in that image, and then compare with what you're seeing in this front image here with the flying craft. Now, this whole garbage about CO2 emissions causing so much duress and harm to the planet, yet this drone that I see has all this metal and propellers, probably carbon fiber, all the extra wiring and all the computer-driven whatever interface it is to make that thing work, whether it's autonomous or self-driven. If it's autonomous, it has to have an enormous amount of infrastructure on the ground to make that thing fly. That all takes mining capability and manufacturing processes to get it to that level. So why would you even waste all that resource mining and production to produce all the carbon fiber for these drones? Like, if it's such an existential threat, that's the first thing that needs to stop. Because if you can go to using spinning opposite disks powered by magnets that spin fast enough that have an effect of weightlessness, and then your whatever it is under or connected to becomes weightless and it floats, you don't need any of that because you have a tiny, well, I shouldn't say tiny, but a smaller motor that doesn't burn anything. It uses the magnetic field of the Earth to power itself. One's moving forward on a disk and one's moving backward on a disk. And they're just like two plates next to each other. One's moving forward, one's moving backward, and they're pushing off of each other because as a kid, when you played with magnets and you put them together on the table, you could always get that one and you didn't have to touch it. It would scooch the other one away. Now just scale that up with electromagnets when you could dial in the charge as high as you wanted it and then make those things spin as fast as the composite the magnets are adhered to will hold the stresses that would be associated with. If you're going to tweak it to like 5,000 RPM, 3,000 RPM, that's a little too fast, depending on the composite. But again, I don't know, there's so many possibilities. Most times around 1,200, 13, somewhere around there, it starts to get into that weightless state.
You know, they've never wanted us to think about any of those ideas. When I was a kid, I went over to Disneyland there in Orange County and Southern California, and they have the Magna Rail there that goes around the Disneyland. And I remember the futuristic stuff when I was a kid. I thought, oh, this is cool, you know, and they had a little presentation on there that said that it could go so many thousands of miles an hour, but because of California's laws or whatever, they were only allowed to go like 65 miles an hour. And it just kind of pointed out that we had such great technology back in the day. If they really wanted to save the planet, et cetera, we would have had Magna Rail lines connecting all the major cities where people could travel really fast. But they never wanted that. They wanted to sell us gasoline motors that didn't actually work that great. So they just kept pulling the technology back. And it just shows you they're never going to give the technology that would work out for the human being. They always give you the technology that makes things more difficult to live and things more healthy. And is it too far to think that because these things keep happening, that they're on purpose after a while, that, you know, industries wouldn't keep coming out with the worst possible variation of technology to sell you? Or are they told that they can only do these certain things? So like you imagine if they didn't even have to do the Magna Rail thing. They could have just made the interstate system electronic and or magnetized, where you could just float your car across the U.S. pretty fast. And, you know, they never wanted to do these things. They've always kept it at the future. It's just like right now when I'm watching these Virgin Galactic things and stuff that NASA's doing, and it's all old repeats of Wernher von Braun designs that they were advertising in the 50s, you know. And they've never got past that point. So it tells you that they never have plans to get past that point, which you have to accept that if they're never going to go past a certain point in technology, they have to reset every so often, or the masses will catch on and start doing it themselves. So every so often they have to knock everybody off their little pedestals for a while before they build them back up. And it makes you wonder, how fast is the next cycle going to be? Are they really going to stretch it thousands of years to allow us to come back to now? And if they're not, you know, how are they going to make people forget all of the other simple technologies? Because that's another thing they don't seem to like, are these technologies that people have had for thousands of years that just allow us to live off the earth. And it seems like they're terrified. Yeah, they're terrified of these two ideas kind of merging, where we have an agrarian, sophisticated sci-fi society where we're not actually polluting the planet with dangerous chemicals and stuff, and just using things that don't actually pollute. Like you said, if we could use the magnetics and the electrogravitics of our planet, what kind of, I don't know how you say it, pollution could that actually give you? I don't see how it could be any more than the natural state of things on the planet at any given time.
I don't know. That's a real important part of what you just said about the electromagnetic levitation trains, or maglev trains. I traveled on a fair few of those in China and in Taiwan. And I've gone on some real fast ones in Thailand as well. They have an express train from the airport into Bangkok. And, whizzing by the traffic there. And really, when I say whizzing by the traffic, you talk about traffic and gridlock and stuff. I mean, you look down to some of those scenes off the overpasses on the bridge, and man, it's unbelievable, the congestion. And then, New York is trying to start a congestion tax. See, they're trying to do away with automobiles already, the congestion tax in New York. But that maglev, so think about going from A to B. Now, right now we get on an airplane, and if you're going to go to New York to, let's say, LA, let's say that's a huge main thoroughfare trunk line, New York to LA. Well, it's no different than getting on a ferry in Vancouver and then going off to destination A, B, C, D, E on a ferry. So what do? They load all the cars and the trucks on the boat, and then they take them over as one package and all drop them off in a different spot on an island. Well, the maglev trains, I've been on a few that are rocking off at almost 200 plus miles per hour when they get going to that super incredible fastest speed, and you can hear things going just whizzing by. Now imagine electrogravitics, where those electrified rails are electrified not by burning coal or oil, by using the same Tesla technologies of magnetic fields spinning against each other to then crank the spindle that makes the electricity. Now, most time we need to create steam to get the pressure, to get something to spin to create the electricity. The copper's got to rub against itself. There has to be, and again, other magnetic fields associated with creating electricity. But we'll go back, I digress here. Right now, the maglevs aren't so cost efficient or cost effective because the power plants that you need to put there specifically for it, because it takes a huge amount of juice. You're talking about putting an electrical charge down the track, and instead of a spinning fashion, you're doing it with the electricity to get the electromagnet to raise the train above the track. Now, using that exact same principle as any maglev train on the planet, that everybody knows maglev trains by now. You've seen them. You've seen all the videos. Okay, repurpose that to create electricity by spinning it against each other. That's how simple it is from where we sit now to free power for the planet. Electrogravitics, no transportation costs. It would be very limited except for the construction of the vehicles, because they would weigh nothing. And to move them down the road, well, I guess maybe if you had to build some infrastructure, 1/10 of a cent per year that I'll pay you. These kind of gains we don't need anything really. They already have, and see, this is the thing that irks me the most. This maglev train, and I encourage everybody to get on and go take one of these and see truly how fast they go and understand how they move and what makes them rise off of the tracks. An electric field opposing itself, two magnets pushing against themselves, think of it like that, has been around for at least 20 years. And they didn't, in those whole 20 years, think to try to maybe spin them off of each other. And if you could do that, what kind of spindle could you mount on it so then it could do the same thing the steam does, to spin something to create electricity? But instead of using the steam, we don't need to burn anything or the steam now. All we need is the Earth's magnetic field to spin something that burns nothing. It's free. And once you create the initial infrastructure for it, it runs forever, indefinitely. Well, again, until the composites or the metals, whatever, need to be maintained. For 20 years, we've had that tech, and we're still burning stuff. It's unbelievable. And they want to put these garbage, what are the props on this drone thing? Oh, come on. And now it's getting kind of insulting looking at when you look into the past, which is the future, which is now being underutilized.
It's like putting people on Mars and then giving them some T models to start working on it. I don't know. Is it the fact that no one really is worried about the future of things is the reason they get to pull these falsities on people? Because you would think there would be a larger number of people questioning their reality as far as these things whenever you see certain technologies come out, and then you wonder, well, why aren't they doing this? Or whenever the government tells you they really care about your health care, so we're going to provide you free materials to keep you healthy, yet other things that kill more people they're not helping with at all. Like why isn't the government offering free cancer treatments or free diabetes treatments to cure that? And it kind of tells you that in the end there's only the product. So whenever you see these campaigns, that the end result is some kind of new power which they consider a product, or literally they want everyone to be on a new product. And if you've been seeing their new product line, they are setting it up for a pill forever. So people that are worried about their health can just take a pill every year. It's like a booster, but you just keep taking it. And once you stop, your immune system just kind of goes out of whack. And they've already kind of done that with HIV. They have a pill that'll stop the progression of it, but they have to take that pill forever. That's kind of the mentality, and I think the main weapon they used against people. You've called it metering and other things, but every little niche that we can figure out how to stop having a product that you have to buy constantly is the way to not only self-sufficiency but freedom. Like whenever I buy automobiles, I try to get actually anything, tools, survival gear, whatever it is. I find a product that works and I get multiple of those products the first time, because odds are they're going to break, and you want to be familiar with your products and you want to know how to fix your own product. So the more that you can keep things like that and stop buying more products, because a little secret in the automotive world is that sometime in the 90s they switched to biodegradable plastics. Now this was supposed to be for the environment, of course, but actually what it was is to make sure that each and every single part broke within a certain lifespan. So if you have a certain model of car, it's just going to hit a certain year where all the plastics are just going to fall apart. They're going to crack, they're going to break. And then all of a sudden that you had this car that was completely functional, you're going to find out that all of the pieces are breaking all around the same time. And they want to not only do that with the products like your technologies, so that things like this can happen that are about to happen, where you're going to have a shortage of all of these different things and some of your products aren't going to work, but you can learn how to get around these things. Like right now, I've been trying to figure out how to have an efficient way to, shower. That seems like a big deal. And they have all these hot water on demand things. But you really only have a couple of sources of hot water, and that's electric or propane or wood, which it's really hard. But I've been finding out some really simple tech can do things for people, at least if they live in warmer areas. Like if you have a certain amount of hoses still coiled up, like if you bought them, and they're black hoses, they just heat. It's like a giant hot water heater. And not only can you have hot showers and things like that, if you spread it around your building, it keeps the building warm in the winter as well, because the sun heats all that up. So we're about to have to revert to old skills, but at the same time start taking advantage of some of the new technologies that are available while they're still available. Because I think this whole thing where everybody's used to buying products from and ordering it on Amazon, and in a couple of weeks you get these Chinese products or clothes or whatever it is, all that's going to halt. We're about to go into a super trade war with China. If you've been watching all the signs, there's most definitely going to be some kind of kinetic conventional warfare over Taiwan. And it's doubtful that the United States will get involved. It'll probably be a short-lived battle between Taiwan and China. And I think we're going to see that in the next year as well. And that'll be one of the major distractors and reasons to blame why you don't have food on your table in the coming summer and winter. And I think you're going to start feeling it this winter. Just the prices itself, like I said, they're 15 to 20% higher than just last year, and they weren't that cheap last year.
Yeah, it couldn't be the grand solar minimum or anything on a cycle happening. No, it's always you. And you got to think about, you paint the strangest of picture for me with the words when you described that drone delivery to the homes, and every house will be on the drone delivery, just like every house has a mobile phone now. Everybody has a smartphone. Everybody's got a TV. Okay, there'll be a drone for each individual house that goes and picks up your stuff and brings it back. Well, what if they're going to deliver medicines? Like you said, you have to take the HIV medicine every 3 months. And then what if this thing automatically delivers it to you and says, you have to take this, the state says you have to take this. And then because there's smart dust or some sort of traceable dust in there, barcode for all project, that can monitor the sewage to see if it actually went through your system into the water to maintain compliance. So the picture that's out there, I mean, yeah, water's going to be a big thing. And I appreciate you talking about the water hoses, because that tight winding black water hose, everybody appreciates hot water. So if you know how to even make something like that, or forge the hoses or put it together so you got the correct angle on the hill to get enough exposure on the south facing hillside to warm those black hoses up, but maybe put something darker around it, like a lot of bark or something. Also keep it off the ground and heat up that bark first, really dark, and then put it on top, as long as it doesn't have sap on it. And if you can set up a system where you're putting in, like, how many gallons would be held in a hose, at least 5. So then if you had 3 links of hose, that's 15 gallons of hot water running through on one circulation. So by the time all the hot water exited, you'd have refilled it for another go. So how many times could you do that during a day? So 15 gallons with 3 hoses of hot water. Like if you can set that system up, man, that's a skill set everybody would enjoy having it around a community for sure, especially if there were hoses there because it was already a farm or something. Do you think it's going to happen that fast, though? Really? Do you think it's going to happen that fast?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we just saw how fast our constitutional systems changed over in what, a year and 3 months. No one would have predicted that things would have changed this fast worldwide. And I keep harping on this point that I've never seen, other than maybe World War I and World War II, which wasn't complete, obviously, because there was a big combat going on, and things didn't get worked out the way that the elites wanted them to that time. But this is the first time in recorded history that I know of that every faction on Earth, whether it's communist or capitalist or whatever you want to call it, agreed to all do the same thing and all take the same measures and all push the same exact narrative. I've never seen that. I didn't even think it was quite possible, but here we are, and they did. So any countries you thought we weren't getting along with, China, Russia, Iran, whatever it is, they all took the same exact measures and participated in the same programs as their supposed enemies. Like Iran and Israel were both making sure everybody was medicated and making sure their mouths were covered. I've seen the peak of human stupidity and just basic common sense about the way things work. Like, just for example, putting something over your face that has holes in it 1,000 times the size of the thing you're supposed to be blocking out. It's like trying to fill up a bucket of water using a fishing net and wondering why you can't get water in the bucket. I mean, you see people driving alone, protecting themselves from what? I don't know. I've seen people swimming, I've seen the most of the ability of someone to push an idea that is nonsensical and have groups of people cult up and agree with it. And I know in the back of their head, they know they're wrong, but they're unwilling to not be part of the group. And that's what the scary thing is there's like 10 of those for every critical thinker that doesn't want to participate, if not more. It seems like it's more like 90 to 10 or you know, like even more so, like 95 and just 5% out of 100 that are just saying no. Where I live, they've kind of, you know, ignored at least the mandate to cover your face. So there are some hope that some people are think for themselves out there.
Yeah, well, that means all the world leaders, excuse me, were given all the same information about the onset of grand solar minimum, 3,100 year cooling, 4,000 year cooling, entry out of this particular interglacial into something much steeper and cooler on an average temperature basis. Like, they were all given the exact same information globally, and they're all responding for the same response. That's intense. David Devine right here, along with Ransom Godwin, 420 TV, Freedom of Films. Thanks for joining us tonight. Remember, listener supported right here, Revolution Radio Studio A, freedomslips.com.
Thank you for
Thanks for
listening
watching.
Revolution Radio.
What the heck is the truth, Jihad? Hey, I'm Kevin Barrett.